Welcome back to the Contact Onsite podcast. This podcast is dedicated to the innovators and the pioneers shaping the future of the construction industry. Welcome back to the Contact Onsite podcast. Today, I'm very excited to invite Chris Arrujo. He is from BN Builders, and he is the innovation manager there. Chris, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to have you on the podcast. Thanks for taking the time. Could you introduce yourself? Tell us about BN Builders and about your role there.
Sure thing. Like you said, my name is Chris Arrujo, the innovation manager for the LAOC region of BN Builders. We are a company that was founded about 22 years ago in Seattle, Washington. And we are up and down the West Coast now. So our primary office is in Seattle. We have another one in the Bay Area. We have one in Colorado, another in the LAOC region, two offices actually in the LAOC region, and one in San Diego. We are a company that focuses primarily on corporate tech, aerospace, healthcare, life sciences, office spaces, really just about any market sector. We do ground up work and we do a lot of tenant improvement work.
And so why don't we start off with kind of understanding what does it mean to be an innovation manager and what do you do?
Sure. I think the answer is probably pretty varied across the industry, but the innovation group at BNB is responsible for the adoption of new construction technology company-wide. So anywhere from the field side to pre-construction and estimating, marketing, business development, anywhere that construction tech can really have an impact. As the manager of the innovation group in my region, it's my job to be a one-stop resource. So there's a lot riding on the position because you have to be a subject matter expert in a whole bunch of new and unheard of things. You have to spend a significant amount of time learning and being in the R&D space. And you really have to be an excellent salesperson because you're pitching new things to people all the time who've never even heard of what you're bringing to the table, right? So that kind of goes in every direction. The sales pitch isn't always to your own project teams. I also get involved in presenting to clients, presenting to students, lecturing at universities. I'm on continuing education advisory boards. It's like the dream job for an extroverted nerd.
I love it. Okay. We started off this conversation with you telling me you're doing your dream job. So you're living a dream. So it's exciting to hear that's part of your career. There's a lot of people
My
who are
daily life.
Yeah, it's your life. A lot of people are interested in entering the construction industry and they're very concerned that it's a difficult space. So it's good to hear that people in the industry that are passionate and loving what they're doing.
Yeah, I hope that everyone in our industry is actually passionate about what they're doing. But I do know we're a group of about 20 people on the innovation side across the company, and everyone in my group loves their job.
We'll try to get some tips in for people who are interested in pursuing more of this and pursuing more of their dreams. So what would you say the BNB's innovation process looks like?
That's a good question. We're a very entrepreneurial company. So for me, that actually makes my job a lot easier. I've personally been in situations in past companies where the people I was there trying to help told me to my face, they thought I was useless. They wouldn't adopt what I was implementing. They didn't need me, you name it. And we deal with that in construction all the time, especially in the technology space. It's pretty well known across the industry. Construction is just resistant to change. Unfortunately for those people, it is my job to be an agent for change. And so I've been really happy to land myself at BNB because the folks at BNB aren't like that. A lot of times my project teams will actually bring ideas to me and we work on them together. So example, just yesterday, I had a project manager invite me to join a meeting that he'd already set up to get drone captures on one of our projects so that we could heat map the skin system and use it to determine whether the glazing was insulating appropriately. So I have project managers here at this company and estimators approaching me with ideas on a regular basis that we then get to research, develop processes for, and implement together. It's very collaborative. I pull out way less of my hair and frustration. It's also obviously the right approach. I can scream about new technology until I'm blue in the face, but those in charge of a project need to see the value of something before they use it. And so our innovation process is very collaborative and it usually starts with our project teams.
Okay, great. So I think you shared here a few things that are super interesting and would be I would I'd be enjoyable to elaborate on. So you're you guys managed to build a really amazing culture. If that's if you're at that stage where people are already inviting you into the room and they're initiating that conversation. So maybe small question there is, what do you think is that culture and how do you guys foster that? Oh, that's the first question.
Good question. It's in our own company motto. We are a collaborative builder. That's what we like to call ourselves, right? I think because of that fostering of a collaborative nature that the leadership group brings into the company, it just naturally filters down to the rest of us. Their hiring process is very specific in that they're only looking for people who are go-getters, who are team players, who want to work together. So that obviously makes my job quite a bit easier and my life quite a bit easier. So it's that company culture of wanting to work together, wanting to actually help each other out that really has made my position in the innovation space much more effective.
That's so you're really saying it's from the hiring stage, there's a culture that the company is looking for. And so really even the people coming in already have that mindset.
Yeah, we are a rapidly growing company. And so we're hiring on a constant basis. We're always bringing in new people. And I would say hats off to the leadership group here because every conversation I have with a new project manager who comes in or a new superintendent or somebody who's related to our job site, who's a part of our job teams, our field teams, not just people who are in the office, they're always talking about, oh, at my last company, we used this technology, or oh, on my last job, we did this. Have you heard of this? And so I think it's that bringing in people who have like the same goals and ideas and mindset. That's what really helps to foster change in a company, positive change. And we've just been fortunate enough that our leadership group really understands that. I think that's really important that any leadership group in a company like ours, in a construction company, needs to be able to foster that positive change.
That's incredible. And it's fun to hear you speak about it and also in such a positive tone. Kudos to the
Yeah.
company. Yeah, it's a total rarity. You guys are a unique bird in the industry. At least that's what it sounds like. So you described the fact that it's a collaborative process and that you sit down with the project teams. Could you maybe shed a little bit more light on what that collaborative process looks like?
Sure. For instance, like I said yesterday, so one of the project managers on one of our projects, we have a building in Beverly Hills where we're doing a skin replacement. And the new skin that's being installed on the building is supposed to be very highly advanced. It's view glass. So basically, as the sun moves around the building, the tint on the glass changes, it adjusts. And that's obviously for visual reasons, that's better for the occupants of the building, but also that has impacts on how the skin system absorbs sunlight and less heat and that sort of thing. We're trying to show the owner, or we're trying to impress upon the owner that the effectiveness of the glass is such as it's been claimed. That's a part of what we have to do. And him coming to me and saying, hey, we're going to use drones to do this. We could just put some scaffolding up and we could take temperature measurements across the entire glazing system and compile those in a spreadsheet. That would probably be fine. But what we're actually going to do is we're going to heat map the skin and we're going to show all of the areas of really high retention of heat versus all the areas where the insulation is working or the insulated glass is working appropriately. People who have the ability to understand that there is the way that you could do it, that the way that you've always done it, or there is a more effective, more advanced way that you could do something that's going to take less time. It's going to be way more efficient and the output is going to be a lot more accurate and a lot better for the project. Those are the areas that, or those are the kinds of people that I really enjoy working with because that's kind of the process that we go through on almost all of my projects. All of my project managers, all of my superintendents, they're coming to me and saying, there's this really cool thing that we can implement. Let's take a look at this.
So there's a good sentence. I'm probably butchering it, but it says better try to stop or slow down a galloping horse than to try to pull a lazy donkey. And there's like an example here of we want to run forward. They're bringing a lot of ideas but it's also a cultural, like a company or corporate thing that they're willing to take that risk of, yeah, let's get a drone. We have a budget for this, or yeah, let's map it out like this. Let's give it a go. Let's give it a try. That's also something that I find is unique in that culture.
Yes, absolutely. And to your point, it's multifaceted, right? There are two pieces to this. There's A, the way we've always done it, which we know is effective. And there's B, that budget component that you just mentioned. Is there money for something like this? And one of the things that I would definitely impress upon is that we're not looking to use technology just to use technology. And my project teams, if I bring something to the table that is going to cost a lot of money and they can't see the benefit, the answer is no. But that's not what we're working toward. We're not working toward just using technology for the sake of using it. We're working toward using technology to maximize output for our projects, to really show benefit. And our PMs understand that. And that's why they're willing to bring these things to the table. And like you said, they get excited about it, which is fantastic because I like working with somebody who already has thought of an idea, brought it to the table, and knows that it's going to work for their project because we can make that happen.
Okay, so I'm mind blown because this leads me to another question. How do you guys measure the ROI of did this work out? Was it worth it in the previous project? Should we do this again? Like, do you guys have a certain measurement that you guys go about? You're just giving me an example of how you guys are doing it to the glass. Like, okay, they're making all these claims. Let's see that the glass is as effective as they say it is. But how are you guys measuring it, if at all?
How many people would ask you to just move on to the next question? That's a hard one to measure, right? That's, I think, probably one of the biggest struggles that we have is being able to prove the value of advancement when it hasn't been proven in the past. And I think that's also one of the bigger things. So being in the innovation group, I focus a lot on building information modeling, BIM. It's an industry buzzword. It's been around for quite a while. How do we measure the value of BIM is one of the things that we're always talking about. And it's difficult to measure the value in some ways because by implementing these technologies and implementing these processes, we don't know what we have or have not impacted on a job in terms of cost savings, potential impacts to the project that were negative that we prevented from happening, that sort of thing. But we do have some metrics of efficiency in some of the tools that we use. And one of them, for instance, if you're familiar, Dusty Robotics has a wall layout robot and it automates wall layout. And so on some of our projects, we've seen gains of efficiency in terms of several weeks of what would be a manual layout process now reduced to 2 or 3 days. That's measurable. And so that's a tool that we use quite frequently on our projects because we've been able to prove the success and the value of it. We're also responsible for things like MEP coordination. We can measure the value of MEP coordination because we know that coordinating in the field can be really expensive. If you run into issues, you have all kinds of delays. You have other challenges that you face in terms of manufacturing and getting things out on site that can push your schedule and can add up in terms of cost. Coordinating prior to mobilization in the field for your trades, obviously that saves time and money because you already know exactly what your design is supposed to look like before installation. And then you can fabricate to that design, which has already been pre-approved. So like I said, there are some ways that we can measure the efficiency gains and apply cost to those efficiency gains. And unfortunately, there are some ways that we just have to know that what we're doing is better than what we were doing.
So there is a misconception, and I love that you busted it right off the bat. Technology is some sort of gadget, or it just for the sake of it. We're trying to be forward thinking, or some other kind of lack of practical or approach. And here you are saying, no, we're trying to measure it as much as we can. And if it's a bad idea, they throw it out the window. What are the hurdles holding back the industry in terms of adopting a technology or seeing the benefits that it's bringing?
I think our industry is a special case in this scenario. We're a little bit different in the fact that construction, first of all, construction for the last 20 years lags behind the rest of the economy from a labor efficiency perspective. Buildings are more complicated. Building systems are more advanced. Designers are taking liberties that they didn't take before. I've worked on projects where you literally could not understand the building unless you were looking at it 3-dimensionally. 2D drawings did absolutely nothing. I worked on a project that was a concrete sphere, for instance, in Los Angeles. It was a sphere suspended 40 feet in the air, sitting on two base isolators. Super cool building, but there was no way that we were able to understand that without looking at that and analyzing it in three-dimensional space. Like I said, buildings are more complicated, right? How we build is relatively the same, though, over the last few decades. There are only a few major advancements to speak of. And that being said, we've come to a crossroads, I think, with innovation in construction, because our industry is seeing the least ROI of any other industry from a labor cost perspective. And like I said, personally, I think this is a multifaceted issue. Innovation can be a sensitive topic, and it can be scary for some because it always means change. And it's an unfortunate fact that as we progress in our careers and we become better at what we do, we also latch on to what we do. We become more resistant to change. So the people in the positions where they can actually affect change, they tend to be higher up on the ladder, right? They're also the least likely to adopt it. And so that's one of the issues that I think we face in our industry, is that those people who are at the top, and I hate to say this for anybody who's listening who is, but those people who are at the top are also the least likely to want to change, because it's scary and it's an emotion, right? You make a lot of emotional decisions in your career, and unfortunately that happens to be one of them. The other issue with new technology is obviously that there are steep learning curves, and that kind of goes into what I just said. The last thing is really, again, the one thing that's unique to construction is that adopting a poorly vetted technology or a process that hasn't been fully thought out, it doesn't just hurt your bottom line. It's not just a dollars issue, but it can actually lead to physical injuries. So the nature of what we do in this industry, it's a very physical industry. We're out on dangerous job sites on a daily basis. That's why safety is so incredibly important to our company and a lot of other contractors out there. But I could take a really simplistic example. For instance, you put a VR headset on somebody. Someone strapped into a VR headset on a job site, in concept, maybe it sounds like it could be cool or useful, but in application, you probably don't want someone walking around a job site fully immersed in a non-existing environment, unable to see what's happening around them. That's a recipe for disaster. So as far as hurdles in construction are concerned, I think probably our biggest one is really just that everything has to focus on safety and making sure that we're building appropriately so that we don't run into issues in the field. And also after we've built something, if we've adopted some poorly thought out or vetted process, could lead to literal collapse, and nobody wants to see that. So I tend toward that's why we lag behind, is really just because of good intentions, but it is an unfortunate circumstance. We do lag behind.
Okay, so how about we go into the solutions for this? Like, what do you think is going to be the tipping point, or these solutions that we need to adopt as an industry?
I think that we can focus on often the areas that we know we can provide value without adding risk. So one of the examples I use with my own group is the adoption of 5D estimation. And I don't know if you're familiar with 5D estimation, but essentially it's taking a building information model and using that for quantity evaluation and to produce estimates. Another one that I think of frequently is 4D scheduling, which is using a BIM, a building information model, to drive the schedule on a project. And then also at subsequent iterations of your model, you're adjusting your schedule accordingly. Both of those are relying on BIM, which any major player in the industry is already familiar with. But that being said, most are not taking advantage of BIM to its fullest, but they're two great places to start. There's minimal risk to your bottom line. It can be a much more efficient process than the traditional legacy processes that we're familiar with. Owners love the ease of understanding the information when you present it to them, something that logically ties to a visual tool. Most contractors already have everything they need for a full implementation of either of these two things. And the technology that you utilize to implement these is a compounding thing. Like one piece of progress leads to another and so on, right? We don't all have to be 3D printing buildings tomorrow, for instance, but using BIM to capture that low-hanging fruit does open the door to additional use of these tools in the future, which may actually lead to things like 3D printing buildings.
So the first steps is something like you're describing it as something that's an easy transition or an easy modification of, I'd say, today's processes. Like look at 5D estimations, go into and go start using the models, the BIM models to do scheduling, start looking at that data, that information, start leveraging that in your processes.
Yeah, I think basically the point is that the scary things are a lot less scary when you're spoon fed them versus just immediately thrown into it. Right. And you can also vet out those processes. You can make sure that your ultimate goal is safe and approachable by taking those baby steps, making sure that every small piece of the process up to that point has been beneficial and has actually worked as it was intended to. You have a much easier time trying to convince people of the value of something if they're already seeing it in little bits and pieces versus just throwing it at them.
Yeah, and I before we were speaking about the people component, and now we're back to the kind of the person mentality that he's getting thrown into an innovation versus him getting warming up to it. Like, what do you do with your teams to really get them? You said you got to be a good salesman or to be able to pitch it. What do you get it, and what do you find is the most practical way to really get buy-in from the teams?
I've built a strong network of allies. I hate to say it, you have to be a salesperson. If you're an innovator, you have to know how to sell. Any agent for change needs to have unwavering, dedicated allies. Personally, I can try to convince a project team to adopt some kind of fringe technology. Like I was mentioning to you before, the wall layout robot, or another one is a robot that does daily laser scans for variance reports on your project, as installed versus as designed. I can yell about the benefits of that from the highest mountain all day. But my project teams are interested in hearing how that's worked for somebody else. And me, as the person who's trying to pitch this new development or this new technology, I'm a lot more effective at getting my project teams to buy in than one of their peers. So if you can find one person on their level who's done it before, another project manager, a superintendent, a project executive, someone with a positive experience to share, that's worth more than anything from me. Any conversation, any presentation, it doesn't matter. So I might be a subject matter expert, right? I know what I'm talking about, and that carries a lot of weight on its own. But in our industry, it's really that peer-to-peer experience. So I try to impress upon my team that you need to have people on your project who you get along with and who see the value of the work that you're doing. You have to have those allies because those are the people who are going to then talk positively about you to the next project team who may or may not adopt the tools that you're trying to implement. It's entirely up to them. So I need to be a good salesman to get myself on one project. And then I need to basically ask everyone else to be a salesman on my behalf to get myself on every other project.
And is this when you're saying they want to see a successful application of this tool, and that's probably the stronger thing that you can leverage? Is that also relevant if the construction tech company is coming with a prior use case with a project manager that's from outside the company?
Probably more. I don't want to speak bad of anybody, but I've had plenty of vendors who come to me with what they claim to be a magical changes everything for the better kind of product or solution. And I ask for a demo and there's no demo that they can provide me. I ask for past project experience and there's nothing that they're willing to give me or able to give me. Usually they'll use the veil of, oh, we have NDAs. We can't really disclose any of that information, or, oh, there's proprietary processes involved. We can't show that to you. A lot of times vendors will come to you basically, trying to sell you a product that they're claiming to be amazing. And it turns out to be snake oil. And so again, I hate to say that. I'm sure there are a lot of listening to this right now, and my face is up on here. I'm very sorry, but it's the unfortunate truth of what it is that we deal with. There are so many tech companies out there, and there are so many people trying to get a piece of the pie, and everybody wants to develop a new and innovative product. And I don't doubt that every single one of those people who comes to me believes in what it is that they're selling, and maybe it's not quite there yet, but they need the customers to get it to where they want it to be. And all of that is fine. But there is still inherent risk associated with that. And I would advise my own project teams, if you have a vendor who is giving you a demo of their software, giving you a demo of what it is that they're trying to sell you, we should still seek out other people who have experience with this tool, who've used it and have positive things to say about the outcome. So even from my own perspective, yeah, I still want other people who've used the tool to talk to me about it and show me what it is that they did with it, because even I don't trust it sometimes.
So I think this is great insight for a lot of the founders out there. If you're going to say you're going to deliver a demo or you're going to give something, do it. And what do you think the future of the construction industry is going to look like? And how can technology help shape that future?
Good question. I think there are two major ways that technology can help us. There's a million smaller ones, obviously, making our jobs easier, making us more efficient, minimizing the mistakes that we make, all of that stuff. But the two that come to mind for me are safety and automation. That's where I think technology can add some major benefit to our industry. I've already touched on the safety component a little bit too, right? New technology for the sake of new technology doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be beneficial or safe. And safety for us is a big deal because you're talking about people becoming critically injured in situations where safety is lacking. Speaking to that, we have robotic layout, for instance, which I was saying we already use in the field. That automated robotic layout. We don't use it on every project, but we use it on some. It eliminates human error. It aids in efficiency. That's the kind of thing that we like to see. Like I also mentioned, there are robots that can walk your project every day. They can take scans to track progress, generate variance reports, that sort of thing. That's, again, boosts in efficiency, really can help out your project, especially if you have complicated mechanical systems, for instance. Those variance reports on your mechanical systems as installed versus as designed, those can be huge down the line for preventing things that you're going to have to fix that can be costly. Augmented reality, that's another one that comes to mind. Up and coming still as a tool. You could use that to automatically detect job site hazards, warn you of unsafe conditions. Further down the road, maybe a lot more becomes automated. We do have the potential for large scale 3D printing and other bigger applications of technology. And buildings become more complicated. I don't doubt that at some point in our lifetime, we'll probably have buildings with systems that are so advanced, it almost seems like the building is a living organism, right? And so then the way that we build these structures will have to become more advanced, and the way that we manage these structures will have to become more advanced. And so that speaks to commissioning and how we use technology to, help us provide to an owner or client or whoever is going to be managing or maintaining that highly complicated building, all of those systems built into a virtual environment with clear information on how they malfunction, why they're malfunctioning, and what to do about it, stuff like that. So I think those two areas, efficiency and safety, are probably the biggest that I see growth for technology and construction. The actual process of building a building maybe doesn't change so much as far as I'm concerned. It's really more so the tools that we use to get there. But who knows? I didn't think that 3D printing was going to be a thing 10 years ago. And it turned out to be more than it actually was. They 3D printed buildings, small, obviously, but single family residences and that sort of thing for homeless populations in major cities. Yeah, it really could move a lot faster than even I'm thinking it will. But those are the thoughts that I have on it so far. Sure.
Are the three most important skills an innovation manager needs to have?
We touched on them a little bit, right? You need to be a salesperson. First and foremost, I think you need to be someone who listens and asks questions. Being innovative isn't about change for the sake of change. You have to understand why something isn't working and how you can improve the process and provide value. Interpersonal skills, I think, are also a huge one. Yes, you have to be a thought leader. Yes, you're here to be a subject matter expert, right? But you also have to be empathetic to how some people feel about technology. And honestly, you have to be able to acknowledge that sometimes people will say or do things to undermine your position, and it's not personal. It's just coming from a place of misunderstanding or fear. So you have to be able to build those strong relationships and positive associations. And I would say, maybe not the last, but if we're talking three, you have to be an information sponge. If you stop researching, if you stop learning, asking questions, wanting to understand, you're basically no longer an innovator at that point. And we all get to that point at some time in our careers. I've been there myself. It's not always easy to be that person, but I did watch the industry pass me by as well. So you really have to strive to be constantly wanting to learn, wanting to know more, wanting to solve problems, find the problems that need solving, just actively engaged. I would say 24/7. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I think, oh, I wonder if we're doing this, or I wonder if there's a case study for that. And I'll write it down and then go back to sleep.
Is living a dream. I think you.
Yes, it is.
I think that's also it's such an important component of there's something I'm so passionate about. I'm trying to solve. I'm really trying to solve it. I'm passionate about this. I heard a story. I watched Oppenheimer not long ago. If you watched it,
Seen it. Yes.
so there's this thing where I don't remember if Einstein's in the middle of a lake or whatever. He's just saying it, but there's a stories about Einstein being so invested or so passionate about the problems he's doing. He didn't even realize he left his home barefoot. And it's like, he's like that involved in it. And it's so exciting to see how the future, how a project could be done more efficiently and how we could build smarter. I know that I'm passionate about it, which leads me to the next questions. What advice would you give other construction professionals who want to live this dream? How can they become an innovation manager?
That is going to have a slightly controversial answer. I'm glad to be asked. I think that it's actually a really important one to answer. I always like to say that if I'm successful at my job as an innovator, then I will work myself out of a job. I think we've reached a crossroads in construction, especially in the technology space, where our focus as an industry should be about teaching everyone why it's important that all of us be agents of innovation. Subject matter experts, obviously, were important in every field, right? So nobody is going to specifically replace a dedicated innovation person because we're always going to be that person whose actual job it is to innovate, to think, to ask the questions, to bring things to the table when everybody else is too busy to do that. But we can't accomplish full innovation on any of our projects or in general if we limit innovation to a select group of individuals. So maybe that doesn't really answer your question so much in terms of what a traditional career path might look like if you were interested in getting involved in being an innovator. But from a future perspective, for those people who are interested in being innovators, particularly in the construction industry, I would encourage them to find what it is that they're passionate about innovating and move in that direction in their career. So if you want to be a project manager, an estimator, if you want to be out in the field, maybe you want to be a superintendent, go down that route, but also take that interest you have in innovation with you so that your successful future path with construction tech is for all of us to be innovation managers and not to have those roles pigeonholed and defined by only certain individuals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's also very encouraging because the message is for anyone today who's already a professional in the industry is if you're passionate about this, don't wait to get that title. Just dive into it. Start looking for technology that you can implement.
Absolutely. And there are obviously, we in the innovation group, we are connected to our projects in every way that we possibly can be. And it is our job to understand how the building is going to be built, how it is currently being built. We have to visit our projects. We have to be a part of the project team. But it's not without saying that those who have the most intimate relationship with the project are the actual members of the project team, your PEs, your PMs, your supers, those kinds of individuals. And so when I think about what challenges are we going to face, what problems are we going to have to solve, I'm having conversations with those individuals and asking them those questions. My advice is always ask yourself those questions. You're going to be the person who is going to see exactly where we can provide value on this project. Ask yourself those questions and then come to me and say, I think we should do these things. And then it's my job to say, yeah, that's super cool. Let's take a look at that.
So, what would be And we're moving on to another question, which is the tech companies. And what tips or best advice you can give to a construction tech company who wants to approach you or present their product? Like, what is the best tip you could give them presenting or also when they're building their product?
I know that this can be difficult to do, especially for a new company, but because of the way our industry operates and because of the risk that's associated with taking on things that we're not necessarily familiar with, I always like to see a tech company who's approached me have either case studies that they can provide of projects that this has worked on. And if that's not possible, and I understand that it's not, I at least want to see a well thought out and well vetted demo. If you're not able to at least provide me with a demo of how your product works so that I can make my own decision as to whether or not it'll be beneficial on my project, chances are we're not moving forward. I can give an example. I had one project reach out to me, one vendor reach out to me, will remain completely nameless, but they were promoting an AI version of something that we already do, which is basically so we capture existing conditions on projects where we do TI work, we laser scan, and then we have to have that laser scan converted into a model so that we can use it for clash coordination. Their process was eliminating the people who do the modeling from the laser scan to the model and having AI do it. They told me it was going to be cheaper, it was going to be faster, it was going to be all of these things. And I asked for demos. They said they'd worked on a bunch of projects before. They had past experience and history with it, and it was successful. So I asked them to provide me with at least some information that I could use to bring this to my project team. And they were unable to do so. I asked them for a quote, like a formal quote on utilizing this tool on one of my projects. And they ended up coming back to me basically for a process that should have taken 2 weeks to have a human do it. They had 171 days and it was about 10 times the cost. And so that for me is a huge waste of time, right? You caught me, you cast out your line and you caught me because you were using buzzwords. When I asked you for examples, you didn't have any to share. And then when I still gave you the benefit of the doubt and actually sent you a project to get a quote on, that was the result. So it's always really important for me. Sometimes I will respond if I think something is too good to be true. Sometimes I just respond out of curiosity. I want to see if it's actually accomplishable. But most of the time, if a company brings wild claims and promises to me and can't back it up, that's going to be an immediate no. So if you have something that's really, truly revolutionary, and I'm sure a lot of people out there do, I know it's going to be a challenge, but one of the biggest things you have to do is come to the table with legitimate information, something that you can actually share that proves to me that there's value. Otherwise, we're stuck.
Okay, great. Chris, it's been a real pleasure to have you on the podcast. We ran out of time, but I feel like I want to do another hour together. I'm just asking, but I really enjoy the conversation. And I think there's a lot of insights here for really everyone across the board. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much.